So what you do, I was thinking about specific situations. I mean, the finding your optimal sleep is obviously, sort of the crux of everything, right? Finding how much you need. But what about, okay, so you got to go to the airport at 3:30 in the morning, and that's a completely one-off event. Do you just roll through that, and basically you'll make up for it in subsequent days? Because I know a lot of times people will go to sleep earlier because
and tie into that, if you could, travel, like, because you do it all the time. So how you handle jet lag if you're jumping time zones. So kind of the same thing if you're gonna have a one-off event.
So if you have a one-off event and your body is used to when to fall asleep, when to wake up, then in general, if you have one night of disruption, everything is going to reset and be okay. If you're constantly sporadic in all different schedules, that's when you start to run into more issues. Now, if you have that day where you're getting up really early for that flight or whatever, those are the days where we would talk about using strategic napping. So if you really are exhausted and you're like, there's no way I'm going to make it to my bedtime, then that's where we would throw in the power nap and do the 20 or 30-minute nap, ideally before 10 a.m., at the latest before 2 p.m., to give your body a little bit of the boost. Go to bed at the typical time the next night so the body can reset on the schedule.
What about pre-planning? What about, would you go to bed earlier because you're going to get up earlier, or would you just go to bed at the same time to stay consistent and then make up for it on the back end?
So there's a couple things with that. So again, if it's a one-off in one night, then you're not going to throw off the whole schedule. But that's where we have people that have their week schedule and their weekend schedules, and there's not enough consistency. So you sleep at a certain time throughout the week. Then you stay up late on Friday night and sleep in on Saturday. You stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. Well, now you can't fall asleep on Sunday night, not just because you're anxious or whatever else, but because you haven't built up enough sleepiness to fall asleep. And now you're exhausted.
You're not tired enough.
Correct.
Okay.
And then now on Monday, you didn't get enough sleep and you're tired and you start the caffeine and the whole process goes through. So some people will try to go to bed a little bit earlier because they have to wake up earlier. It depends on if you're sleepy enough to fall asleep. Because if you usually go to bed at midnight, now you're trying to go to bed at 9 and your body's really not tired, it may not be helpful. But I will have people that will start to make adjustments if they know, for instance, they're going to be in a new time zone for a period of time, and they'll start doing 30-minute increments to build up to it if they can. If you're only getting 3 or 4 hours and you usually get 8, then yes, you're going to be so exhausted. And if you go to bed an hour or so early that one night, because it's a one-off, it's different than doing it every couple days because you're just sporadic and all over the place. From a travel standpoint, too, it depends on how long you're going to be in the time zone and if you want to adjust to it or not. If you do nothing, on average, it's about 1 hour per day to be able to adjust. So each day, you basically can adjust 1 hour if the body does it naturally. If we want to help with that, some of it is, for instance, using light to your advantage. So if I'm going to go and get somewhere and I'm going to get there first thing in the morning, I want to do my best to sleep on the plane. Mm-hmm. Sleeping on the plane, eye masks, earplugs, consider declining the meal. Because if you're eating and it's taking 2 and 3 hours, because remember, when you eat, that also impacts your circadian rhythm. So if you start eating at the times that you're going to eat in the new time zone, that also helps to get your body to get on track. But if you get somewhere early in the morning, ideally we'd like to stay awake all day until it's bedtime that next night to reset the clock. That's where we would, again, use a strategic nap. And I always say when you get there, don't put your sunglasses on. Get as much light as possible so the light is triggering the brain to produce the chemicals to stay awake. But if you're going the opposite direction, you're going West Coast to East Coast, now you're going to get there, it's going to be later, you need to go to bed, but you're not tired. Put your sunglasses on at 7 or 8 at night. Let it start to get dark. Get into the hotel room, turn the temperature down, have it be cold. On those days, do a bit more of a workout if you can, so then that way your body is more tired and you've built up more exhaustion, so it's easier to fall asleep. Try to avoid caffeine and sugar so that your body doesn't, and it can, same reason we would try to avoid alcohol on those flights, so that our body isn't using the chemical stimulation and it's able to start resetting on its own. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to make those adjustments.
And finally, we'd like to thank Amundi Pioneer for sponsoring this podcast and our time with Dr. Milanak.